So we're going to be talking about our operating model and what the next generation looks like. But maybe before we dive into that, let's reflect on where we've come from in the traditional model. Lots of bureaucratic processes that are sometimes not connected and serve us instead of the business. Many systems that don't connect to each other and don't work for the user, or maybe even procurement itself. We also have people who are evolving skills and very traditional in some of the RFQ, sourcing, category management type environment, and a culture that in some ways I would say really just serves procurement and procurement's purpose. So as we think about the next generation and how we use AI to fundamentally shift that, I'd love to hear from each of you, starting with Elouise, on what do you think those foundational shifts must be from the traditional to the next-gen op model?
Wow, coming in hot. Well,
Why not?
First off, the technology, I mean, you're going to see it today, tomorrow. The technology is so far ahead that I think all roads lead to the people, because the people and the culture are down here, and we have to uplift them to the technology. I'm not worried at this point, I'm not worried about the technology at all. I would just add that we also have to think about processes, because the way we think about processes, like in this AI world, there is no process. There's a starting point, an end point, and constraints, but we don't have to predefine everything. The system and the user can figure it out themselves. And then the other thing I would say is governance becomes a way of operating, not a document that sits in a SharePoint that nobody looks at, but actually how do we embed governance into the whole way of operating.
Laila.
Well, from my point of view, what we will see essentially is a big shift in the skill set that people need to bring, and we need to bring them along with us to be able to cope with the technology that Elouise was mentioning, right? So to bring them to that level, we will need, on the one hand, totally different skills in procurement than we need today, like from my point of view, much more strategic thinking, problem solving, creativity, and a lot of empathy, because we have indeed some issues in the fear of loss of control and especially loss of relevance when we talk about AI and what agents are going to do in the future. So those are things that we will need to cope with.
Thank you. I think we talked about two aspects already, process and people, but I think the other piece is obviously technology. And we've been sitting here for the last 5 or 7 years talking about lots of great stuff. This year is about AI, put AI to work, no question. Let's also not forget about the cool stuff we talked about last year, yeah? And the years before. So for me, it comes back to how do we piece all these things together? And I think AI is a massive multiplier and accelerator for some of the things we discussed before, but also has its place and has its growing place. So it comes back to thinking about how do you piece these things together, and where do you stand in your journey? Can I use AI as a pure accelerator and leapfrog? Or do you need to build this into my operating model, my ecosystem, and how? So it requires a bit of thinking to not overinvest or accelerate too far, but use it wisely. That's my perspective.
Yes, let's focus on the people as part of this op model. And many of us grew up in procurement, so we kind of had our own machine learning in a way of how to do the tactical sourcing, understanding data analysis. When we think about AI now automating those tasks, and those are the foundational elements, how do we think about our future leaders? How are they going to get the machine learning to actually manage the AI and ask the right prompts and governance to make them effective? Patrick, do you want to go ahead again?
Sure. I think it requires a very different leader who manages a multitude of different sort of types of people or personas. Yeah? There's I think the strategic procurement person that is very relevant still to oversee and guide. There are still some transactional processes, operational processes we need people for, at least to ensure quality, for example, or certain governance. And then there's the machine and other personas, their internal and external partners. So for a leader, it becomes a greater challenge to manage across these personas. But I think also, as a leader, we need to think about who is the consumer. and how do I manage that persona? Do we all want to talk just to agents, or how do I mix and create this hybrid workforce that actually satisfies the people we work for, our internal customers or our suppliers, for example?
And Patrick, how do you think about that mix? I know we spoke about this earlier as in terms of human, agent. How do you think about that mix now and over the next 5 years?
I think it will evolve massively. So I think we'll start with a lot of experimentation, a lot of learning, and certainly also some failures. But I think the most important thing is to keep in mind who consumes what we do. The great example that I use with our organization is the personal experience we all have when we talk to the airline when a flight has been canceled. I think we all get very not so excited, pressing 5 numbers to finally get to an agent to talk to and no resolution. So I think this theme of accountability is super important. And I think we as consumers, we want someone to take action and feel accountable. So that comes back to leadership as well. How do we weave this into the evolving workforce that we manage, people and machines?
Elouise, what would you say in terms of those skills in developing the future leaders as well as that human to agent mix?
I for sure, well, I like to frame everything in the generations because the baby boomers are on their way out of the workforce. We as Gen Xers have plateaued in the workforce, and we now have the millennials and Gen Z who have a different relationship to technology and certainly AI. Definitely the Gen Zs have a different relationship to AI. And so we have to focus on the skills that we have. Nobody should be asking me what AI platform to use because I'm too old. And it's not that I don't use it or appreciate it, it's just that, well, first off, I'm gonna have to write checks that younger generations will have to cash. And so as a leader, I have to know what my strengths are. My strengths are empathy, to use your word, relationship management, and critical thinking. And so I want to leverage younger folks who have these capabilities and skills much better. And so I think for leaders, we have to just understand what our strengths are. The agent to human, I think it's irrelevant. I like Patrick's point that we have to think about what's the interface and who is the accountability, but at a certain point, if I just chat with ChatGPT or Gemini, I don't care what happens beyond it. If it creates and has all these agents talking to one another, I don't care, because I'm just interfacing what is useful for me.
Great. Laila?
For me, the most important that leaders will be able to deliver is trust, indeed, because we're talking about VUCA world for now quite a while, so I'm not going to take that up, but here we're talking about a very ambiguous world where we do not know what is the next step. Technology is evolving so rapidly that we do not even know what's coming next, and we still need to give security that people have relevance, that they will have a job, that there is a collaboration and a better outcome for everybody. And this is going to be a challenge because we need to lead by example. This means we need to be knowledgeable about all the tools that are out there, about what a model is actually, because of then experts are talking about and we don't understand anything. We make ourselves a little bit ridiculous, right? So those are challenges that are coming towards us, to deliver trust, to be open-minded, and to have also ourselves being problem-solving and finding new ways for people to get other jobs, to develop, to still stay in an environment where they feel safe and where they belong to, in an agentic hybrid workforce.
Maybe if I can build on this very quickly, because we're talking operating model, I think flexibility and agility is the main criteria to success. If you just slot everything into silos, this is my bot army, this is my people, this is my strategic workforce, and happy ever after, I don't think that's going to work. So a lot of flexibility and agility is required because we live in such different times also. Disruption is the new norm. So how do we use the assets that we have, our people, the hybrid workforce, but also the agents, to deliver against ever-evolving expectations? So the theme of flexibility and agility, I think, is key.
And if I could add to what both of you just said, is Well, those of us in leadership positions, any leadership, even if you're a director, VP, manager, we are the last generation to have a solely human workforce. And everything's going to be hybrid from here on out. And when we have agents and AI employees eventually, HR's not managing those. That falls to us. So that's a fundamental, what you both have brought up, tenet of what is this mix and how do we all work together? And that is the work for us to figure out over the next decade.
Yeah, and I think the concern is too is AI is working potentially more rapidly than the human mind. That really creates a unique opportunity for the managers and the governance of those agents as well. So earlier today, Kareem from Google DeepMind talked about design for impact. So as you're thinking about processes, let's shift from people to processes. I think all of us have seen a lot of great AI use cases being put on top of really bad processes. And while you want to celebrate those, they are small wins, really the fundamental shift is really rethinking those processes, or as you've said, Elouise, maybe you don't even have a process. But as you think about then this design for impact, like what are those legacy process structures, ways of working that we just have to let go of? Laila, you want to start?
Well, we had this very interesting speech of Kareem this morning, right? Where we say, and with the example of goal, right? So there's a goal, and AI, the agent, figures out how to get to that. We, as humans, we think we thought about all different possibilities that have been possible so far and came up with the best solution for a process. This is why our SDP process is also so strict. And we think this is the way it should be going. But if we have only a goal, then who knows what is happening? And many people have an issue with the governance loss, or the seemingly governance loss in the process, because they say, well, we don't know what this thing is doing. But it's not that we don't know what the thing is doing, because we are defining the frame. And for example, if we have the 3-bit policy, we cannot say 100% that all humans are doing this today, but we will probably be 100% sure that the agent is going to do that. So it's even more embedded governance, and it's not zero process. It's just flexibility within a frame that comes to a process. So I'm actually very curious to know which ones are not going to be necessary in the future anymore.
Elouise, I think you're at the edge of your seat on this one.
Well, I'm going to take it just slightly from a technology point of view. Our entire worldview for the last 25, 30 years, and as a function, we've only been around that long, has been source to pay. And all these processes we talk about, it's sort of baked into that ideology that it's source to pay. But set that aside, like eventually that becomes a black box. And I'm happy for it to be a black box. I think everybody in this audience would say, yes, please, thank you. We want that to be a black box, because the work then that we do is unique. It's sitting with the business or even being part of the business and starting to think that we have value. And if you're creating a new product, why would you not have somebody with procurement sitting there equally as important as the engineers or the marketers or the designers? And because you can design a lot of cost out in a new product if you actually understand the materials. And so I really think that automate all the processes. I don't care, because I want to make it frictionless for the end user to buy something, and then I want to do the real strategic work.
Right. And Patrick, I think you have some pretty aggressive goals within Roche around this. Do you want to share your strategy around automation?
Yeah, maybe two aspects to add. First, I like really Elouise's point on the opportunity. And the opportunity here is to leapfrog. So in the past, we had to worry about data. We had to worry about process to make anything work. And I think now there's an opportunity, but to an extent, AI will figure this out. We'll just read 1,000 more documents and understand it. Maybe some of the data problems we've had will be resolved through intake. So just take better data in. AI will produce a lot of data. Maybe that's just better. So I think the opportunity word is critical here when it comes to governance. We have to think differently about our challenges and problems we had in the past and see this as an opportunity to leapfrog. I think the second point for me in terms of wider, bigger governance topics are platforms or foundations. What do I build this on? And I don't suggest just go out there and run 1,000 experiments and trial everything and then see what happens. I think it needs to be somewhat controlled and contained. So your critical tech infrastructure, you need to look for excellence and automation to also create some credibility that you get the permission to do some of that agentic fun stuff. And then I think if you want to scale this agentic, you need to do it in some sort of an environment, whether it's your orchestration layer or your big platform provider or somewhere. If you just run hundreds of experiments for us in a big corporate, that's likely going to create some compliance, auditability, or just performance issues. Yeah. So I think it's the platform word or the foundation word that I also want to bring up here, which is critical. What do you base this stuff on?
Right. So in terms of orchestration and thinking about that within the procurement space, it's really fascinating to me as we start thinking about how do we not continue to perpetuate organizational silos, right? So, procurement agents are talking to each other or to suppliers, sales agents are talking to their customers, manufacturing agents are talking to inventory. How do we bridge those and have orchestration across an organization using agents versus, again, maybe falling into that trap where procurement builds for itself, but yet the beauty comes from the data and other insights you get from across the organization. Elouise, how do you think about that in terms of preventing those silos and orchestrating broader than within procurement?
So fundamentally, we have to start looking at, and I'm going to build on Patrick's point. I was holding myself back, but I'll do it now. We are in the 4th generation of procurement technology. Don't worry, I will answer the question. And when we talk about the Aribas and Coupas and Ivaluas and Jaggers of the world, they're generation 2. And all of the point solutions that were reflected in the spider map were generation 3. And we're now in Gen 4, which is the new platforms that are being built around AI or AI native. And so what can you do with an AI native platform? Well, it comes back to orchestration. Now, we can federate to all of our suppliers, to HR, to finance in ways that we used to have to manually plug in or get somebody to code this API to that API. Now, AI does that in the background. And so this is why we really have to think about generation 4 systems. And they're being built, and you're going to see some of them today. You'll see some of them next year, because they haven't even been imagined yet. But fundamentally, they're going to be built around the core AI platforms like Gemini and OpenAI and Anthropic. And that's what's going to allow us to do that.
Great.
I'm happy to build on this, yeah. I think the one critical aspect for me is that we don't fall back into the trap of doing this for procurement or with the procurement mindset. Yeah, if we start using AI to dictate what our customers have to buy, I think that's going to be a massive challenge. Think about using a travel booking agent to maybe identify an optimal flight for you. Great. If the agent that says, you're going to fly to X, have fun, I don't think anyone likes this. So how do we use this for the people we enable, the people we serve, to make their life easier without overpowering them or have procurement outcomes in mind? I think that's the challenge. We can use it to drive efficiencies, to do more, better, and everything, but it needs to be first and foremost for what the corporate, the company, or the business requires, rather than for procurement, for example, to collect better data.
Laila, I think you're also a believer in orchestration. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to add on what Patrick was saying. This procurement for procurement was long enough, really. And we were talking about this last year and the year before already. And here it's broken up finally, because we need to think about enterprise structure, and we need to be an enabler for the enterprise to get more out of it. So collaborating even further with other functions that potentially will all disappear, but to get something more out for the enterprise as a whole.
Maybe just one additional sentence, because I feel we haven't fully answered your question in terms of the silos. I think it comes back to what I said at the beginning. You need a bit of a plan, an idea how you want to use the different assets available, how and where to use the humans, and then what I just said, have a bit of a purpose. What do you do this for? Why do you bring technology? Do you want to drive efficiencies, greater outcomes, whatever it is? But have the end customer in mind. I think this is sort of how you, in my opinion, avoid silos.
So in terms of internal roadblocks to really unlocking this next-gen operating model, what do you all see in terms of the top 1 to 2 things that are maybe preventing the advancement of this? What would you... Elouise is laughing. I think she wants to go first.
No,
go ahead.
no, I don't have to go first.
No, please.
I'm going to say the controversial thing. I think CIOs are holding the IT organizations, and procurement are my people, so I don't, I'm not opposed to offending CIOs. And if CIOs were really doing their job, we wouldn't have chief digital officers, but that's a whole other argument. But essentially, they have to drive and allow us to innovate within, like, one way or another, AI is coming into every function in every enterprise, and I admit it's overhyped, but at a certain point, once it's baked into every organization, then we are going to do all the things that we've been talking about. And so the biggest impediment, I think, is IT releasing this. And I would also just go back to the leadership, and I would challenge everybody or inspire everybody that is a leader in here or a future leader to really embrace this, because this is not blockchain 2.0. This is not an overhyped technology. This is changing society. And so the sooner we get ahead of this and involved with it, then the better.
Just build on this very quickly. For me, it's about how do we partner with IT, because I don't think we can easily and shouldn't work around them. But how do we partner, and how do we use both our strengths? ERP, platform data, versus our business knowledge and creativity and the excitement while we're all here. The other point I wanted to make is the challenge that will come next year or year after, when we all have to prove the value of AI. Yeah? And how do we demonstrate this? And the second biggest challenge then is, what do we do with what we have generated as an outcome? Do we invest in growth? Do we grow procurement? Or do we take cost out? And how do we do it? So I think the challenge of the future may be even greater than our immediate challenge to get started, because we somehow need to demonstrate what we've done with the stuff that we've invested, and how does it take us further and forward.
Yeah, and on top of all, we cannot forget the people, because on the one hand, we have IT and procurement, of course, that need to collaborate. I agree on that, absolutely. But we have a lot of people that are going to have very changing jobs, or no jobs, or different jobs. So we need to think about that very thoroughly, what kind of plan we have for our organization to develop towards, that we do not lose all those people, emotionally or physically or whatever.
Yeah. I think change management and really articulating this business case to our executives and the CIO is critical for the next few years. Well, thank you all. Loved all the insights, appreciate it. And let's see where we are in the next 5 years. Thanks.